I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit more about our program at IndiMarin. As I said, we are kind of starting from the ground up. Uh, it's sort of hard to remember that in 2020, we were in COVID land and there wasn't any canvassing. So this is sort of a newish thing for us. We are focused on building a strong team of canvassers. And one thing that I've read about, and Cecilia can tell us if this is true, is that because of the pandemic, we all got pretty used to remote ways of being an activist. But now the action is moving back into communities. So we want to be part of that. We want to develop our communication skills. I think that's probably the thing I hear most from people is how do I talk about this election to people? Because we're just all, in this situation of feeling a little bit helpless about how difficult it is to get through all the different partisan media bubbles and the noise. So this is a great way to learn how to communicate. It's sort of a learn by doing apprenticeship. And you talk to people, figure out what works, try something. If it doesn't work, you try something else 1 minute later. So it's a great way to develop those skills. We want to score critical wins in Congress. Cecilia and Lori can talk more about that. We have a really effective strategy so we don't waste our time doing things that won't work. By increasing enthusiasm for the Democratic congressional candidates, we're also going to be building enthusiasm for the for the Democratic Party and for Biden-Harris. So it all comes together into an effort for regaining the presidency too. And then also personal growth and fun. This is, I have to say, probably the reason I care most about canvassing, because I feel like canvassing is an interesting challenge. It sounds like it's going to be terrible, but it's surprisingly fun. You have highs and lows. And I think of it as a hero's adventure. And so I'm going to just tell you why. So the adventure begins when you sign up to canvass. And just like every hero, you must step into the unknown, which you do when you go to a neighborhood where you've never been. And you have this important mission, high stakes, preserving our democracy from a powerful foe. And then you get helpers along the way with the magic gifts of technology and literature and lunch. There's moments of despair, moments of exaltation, and then you get your victory when you finish your turf with a treasure trove of new contacts. And then you go home and you're lauded as a hero by everybody you know who thinks you're so amazing that you dare to go canvassing. And then you talk them into going with you and you rest and get ready to go out again. So I'm excited about all of us having a hero's journey together in our canvassing. George is going to pop in now and he's going to tell us about how we at IndiMarin try to make it easy with the help of BAC.
Thank you, Alexa, and welcome everyone. We're really excited about this, and we're doing, as you can tell, a lot to really make this a really great experience for people. And in terms of what we're offering now for canvassing, we think it's so important that we want to create an experience for people to participate that smooths the road. So the things that people worry about, how to get there, how do I talk to people, where do I go, which if you've done canvassing in the old days with a sheaf of papers and running around like Reno, like I did, is a little daunting. But what we have in the terms of the parts is we have training. Every Zoom is every Tuesday night. There's an orientation, an introduction to canvassing and how to use the PDF app. We talk about learning how to have meaningful conversations with voters. You don't have to have a lot of conversation with a voter if you're first time. We give you a very simple script to follow. But if you feel like you really want to engage with people, we have training too on how to briefly, succinctly communicate with people in a way that creates connection. How to register the voters on those Tuesday trainings. How to use this app. The app is a godsend. It helps you when you get to your location to see visually where the houses you're supposed to visit are, and Then when you go to each one, it tells you who's there. It's all Democratic households. So it'll give you the names of the people. You can ask for them. It really makes things easier. And it's also nice, like a game. You can slowly check off the green dots that you've done in your territory. Getting to these events has been something that has often uh, stood in the way of people's, has been why some people are reluctant to go. But the BAC has created a concierge program, which is really pretty extraordinary. Once you sign up, they have volunteers who act as concierge for each one of these events. They'll reach out to you by text and call and find out if you need a ride, you want a ride, what do you need. They'll set up carpools for you if that's what you need. And having used it once, it is really nice to know that the night before I'm going, I don't have to worry about, well, the last time I went, somebody canceled on me who was supposed to go with me, and they found me someone else. It just makes that easy. You just worry about gassing your car up or getting to your car. Um, the BAC also offers for people when we do overnight trips to CA22, which is really, really important. We really want to get people willing to spend a night or two there because they're not getting as many volunteers as we do in 13 because it's a couple of hour trip. For overnight canvassing, there are stipends, $100 stipends available through BAC. The concierge will help you do it, as well as there is some local people make housing available. So if money seems to be one of the things you're concerned about spending extra money, this concierge program will help you do that. The PDI app, I already talked about it. You load it on your phone. When you go through the training on Tuesday, you get to walk it through. When you get there, because it's a lot to digest, when you get to the site, there's another orientation. They'll go over it again a little bit just in case you didn't get it all. And often, not always, one of the local candidates may be there, but you get there and you get to get with a group of people, and you really feel like you're part of something. We also canvass in pairs. Nobody has to go wandering down a street in Modesto or some other place by themselves. Everybody goes out in pairs. And you can decide to visit every home that you do together, or once you get comfortable, you've watched your companion do it, you can work the other side of the street. And for some people who want to come, they want a friend to come with them, and the friend doesn't want to canvass. That's fine. Have your friend come along. The two of you walk through the neighborhood. You knock on your doors, and your friend is just there for you to, that you've got someone with you. So that's how we're trying to make this a really positive experience. And of course, as Alexa mentioned, it's really satisfying. I can tell you, having done it myself, that when you meet a voter and you actually have an extended conversation, you do some good listening, you talk about some things, you can see you made a difference. This person is really open and they're interested in what we're saying. So that's a great experience. So thank you, and back over to Command and Control Center here.
Okay, I guess that is me. So great. One of the things that we wanted to talk about and really stress is that we're going to be having an IndiMarin road trip to California 22. That's in the Central Valley. It's a bit of a drive, so we're doing overnights. The dates are Friday, May 31st to June 2nd. We're going there to support Rudy Salas for Congress. I don't want to talk about that here because Lori's going to be telling us about why we're supporting him, but just suffice it to say that it's a top priority for the Democrats nationally, and it's a key opportunity for us to flip a seat. We're hoping that we will get a good group together and that we will have the wonderful time of doing something as a group. We want to drive down together, canvass together. We'll be staying in hotels together, eating together. But if you don't want to, you can also eat by yourself or stay somewhere else. Nothing is forced on you. But I think it will be a great experience of working in a group. And there'll be other people there too, other grassroots groups working in the same location. All right, next. Okay, how to sign up. We're going to do this quickly because I actually know you know how to sign up because you're at this meeting. But basically, you go to the IndiMarin.org website and you press the Take Action button, and then you press the Canvas Voters button next. And then you read about our wonderful program, our Walk, Knock, and Talk to Voters program, and you scroll down to the next slide, Betsy, and you sign in for the priority event, Canvassing in Tulare, our Indy road trip. And while you're there, you can sign up for one-day canvassing trips to California 13, and also invite friends and sign them up too. Okay, that is our program. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cecilia, who's going to, there she is again. She's going to tell you about the experience of canvassing in the Central Valley. Thank you, Cecilia.
Oh, thank you, Alexa. So I'm just going to walk through, these are some pictures, because what's the saying? A picture says a thousand words, and you can actually see what it actually looks like, as opposed to me talking about what it's like. Next slide, please. So this is just preparing the staging location before all the canvassers arrive, putting everything together. And then when you check in, you're going to have some, where you, just like any check-in, where you sign in, you have some lanyards for your name tags, and water and snacks are always there. The staging locations can be really all kinds. It could be a Starbucks, it could be a backyard, it could be a park, a union hall. I mean, as many as different staging locations as you can possibly envision, and we've probably tried them all. And then getting ready to canvass. Was just where we started in Porterville. We were just all gathered around having some morning snacks. A huge benefit. Some of the California Central Valley is absolutely gorgeous. And this is just all of the mountains surrounding where we were in Porterville. Absolutely stunning. Rain or shine. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, voters are home more often when it's rainy or it's hot. They don't want to go out, so you can catch them at home. And you can see here some canvassers in the rain, and then some canvassers in the sun where it was warm. And then you find all sorts of things when you're walking along in the street. This is a fellow who had a little, probably like a few-month-old little dog that followed him around because he had dog treats in his pocket. So there was. And then this is George, I think, mentioned that you'll meet electeds often, or the candidates. I mean, and who wouldn't want a picture of you, fist bumping with Rudy Salas on your wall? I mean, that's pretty cool. So this was a meeting in Starbucks where we just got to meet the candidate. This is Jessica Self, who was the candidate there, and they're just getting sort of oriented. And then you have a quick training before you head out. And I just want to point out that right there is Betty Yee, who actually sat through my training and canvassed with us for 2 days. So kudos for her. She didn't walk out on me or anything. She sat for the training. I think I think she's part of IndiMarin, but she was just gathering all her materials ready. She's getting ready to head out. And then, of course, doesn't everyone want to take a pre-canvas selfie before you head out? I mean, really. So you get in the car with your canvassing partner. You have your cell phone there, your smartphone that tells you where to go, and you're ready to go off and find your turf. And there you find your turf at the corner, for this one, of Galileo and Marconi. So, was mentioned earlier, the meaningful conversations. These are just some pictures of the people that canvassers were talking to. They they really make a difference. The canvassers remember those conversations, as do the voters remember those conversations. And after some canvassing in the morning, this is just some pictures of canvassing people taking a lunch break, having some good food. And then was mentioned community dinners for the multi-day canvas trips, gathering around, sometimes some big groups. Pretty cool. And really sharing all the stories that you had during the day, laughing, having some good food. It's a good time. Because as was mentioned before, and why you guys are here as well, it will take all of us to win this election this year. And the power of one voter and one conversation at a time. So you got, George mentioned how you sign up, but so definitely sign up for a canvassing action. And know that you are making a difference. And when we get to the day after the election, you will know that you did it. So I'm going to switch now from pictures to just a little bit of questions that sometimes come up. There's campaign strategy and tactics. And the canvassing part, that is the tactics that we do. The campaign is where the campaign decides where they need to really focus their attention, what their policies and lit's going to look like, literature is going to look like, how they're going to get to victory. But the tactics is how we actually do the work. We walk the path, so to speak. And the two work, strategy and tactics, obviously work very closely together. And the tactics also collect the data. And canvassing is the most effective tactic, those face-to-face meaningful conversations. You collect the data on your smartphone, and the questions are pretty simple. As you're having the conversation with them, do they support, for example, Rudy Salas, or do they want to volunteer? You'll probably talk to around 25 to 30% of the doors that you knock on, which is actually a pretty good percentage of all of the doors that you knock. And you'll leave literature usually for the doors if no one's home. I made this note here because I find it very important to remember is that elections are often won or lost by about 2 voters in a neighborhood. So just think of that. If you have like 40, 50 homes that you're knocking on doors, and you have conversations with 25 to 30% of those, and even if you get commitments for 2 or 3 people, think of that neighborhood, you've gotten 2 voters in that neighborhood, which will make a difference. Next slide. Also, there's often questions about, well, what phase are we in? What are we doing? What's the purpose of all of this? We're right now in a persuasion phase, and that's going to go until October. And in essence, we're identifying all the supporters for the candidate that are needed to win. And you might come across some undecided voters as well, and you'll talk to them about your candidate. And then after October, when the ballots hit their mailboxes, then we already know we've identified those supporters. Then we go back to them to make sure they vote. And we continue to follow up with them until we do know that they have voted. So the common question, and I think Alexa and George had alluded to this as well, is that I really don't want to talk to those Republicans, and I cannot convince them at all, or I really don't want to spend the time on it. And that is good, because we don't talk to them. You might encounter them here and there because sometimes the data is not perfect, or they've moved into the House. And sometimes they welcome a good conversation. But if they're the MAGA Republicans, you just say, bye, have a good day, and move on. But who we are talking to are those low to mid propensity voters. That's Democrats who don't always vote. They're registered as Democrats, but they don't always vote. And then the mid to high no party preference voters, and those are no party preference voters who usually vote, and then all Latinos under 35. So it's a pretty dense population, because remember in CD 22 with Rudy Salas, there's 5% more Democrats than there are Republicans. So that's actually quite a few people. It's just they don't always vote. Next slide. Couple of things to remember. Every door, and I think all of you guys who have canvassed before know every door knock is different. And some of the things, though, this is constant. Some of the things that you hear at the doors from voters will really touch your soul. There's very, very, I will never forget some of those conversations. It's okay to be nervous, although I really liked what Alexa had to say about going out and having her story about canvassing. The most important part of the conversation is to listen. So when you think, oh my God, I have to memorize all of this stuff about my candidate and I have to spew it out and give it to them, you're actually not going there to just spew out a lot of information about your candidate. What you're doing is you saying, you know, I'm with the candidate, and I want to hear, the candidate wants to hear what's important to you. And you're really the voter's secretary or note taker at that moment. There's some handy phrases to elicit conversation. I had one canvasser the other day who encountered a voter, and the voter said, oh, no, I don't vote. My vote doesn't count. And he was going to shut the door. And the canvasser remembered this. Tell me more about that. So he thought, oh, I don't know how to deal with this, but I'll try this phrase. Tell me more about this. The guy, and he paused for a little bit, and the guy who he was talking to paused as well for a moment. And in the silence, he responded to, well, I'm a felon and I can't vote. Felons can vote as long as they're not currently incarcerated. And the guy not only got registered to vote on the spot, he took a yard sign, he's voting for Rudy Salas, and he signed up to volunteer for Rudy Salas. So just think of the power of that. Tell me more about that, and the power of that conversation. And then know your why. Why are you doing this? Because we want to save our democracy. Next slide. Okay, but you don't know what to say at the door. I'm going to just say these words, and they're obviously written here on the slide here, but make it your own, because you're not a robot, and it's really boring to read from a script, frankly. But this is some suggested words. Hi, my name is Cecilia. I'm a volunteer with Rudy Salas and the California Democrats. Rudy's running for Congress, and he's asked us to talk to every voter in the district. He wants to know what's most important to you. Like, if you were in charge, it could change one or two things. What would they be in your community? And you want to listen. You might not even know who you're talking to until after you've had this conversation. And be friendly, be conversational. You're meeting a new friend. And then probably the most important, though, after you've had this conversation, which could last 10 to 15 minutes sometimes, you always want to follow up with, can I put you down as a supporter of, and I'll use Rudy Salas as an example. So they actually say the words, yes, I am going to support Rudy Salas, and they'll remember that. And I think that is the end of my section. Of course, I'm willing to, very happy to answer questions at the end of this, but I will turn it now over to Lori.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody here. I'm going to just talk for a little bit and put the Central Valley into the national sort of context. This is a great slide of the House battleground districts in the United States this year. We're focused on the toss-up districts, and those are the sort of beige areas across the country. And the slide also really illustrates that rural-urban divide that we have here. It's a little misleading because the blue areas have many, many tiny districts that you can't see, but this is the great picture. And you can see about 12 holds and about 12 flips. So 12 seats that we have to hold, 12 opportunities to flip. We need to gain net 4 new seats. And you can see that California is that road to the House at the top here. 1 hole down in 47, that's Katie Porter's districts, and 4 flip opportunities, including the 2 in the Central Valley. Next slide. Here's a blown up slide of California, and you can see the 5 districts that we're talking about this year: 13, 22 in the Central Valley, then 27 down just above Los Angeles, and then a small one on the coastal area. That's that 47 Katie Porter's district, and the eastern one that looks that the cursor's moving over, that's 41. And these are our candidates: Adam Gray in 13, Rudy in 22, and then down in the south, Whitesides in 27, Will Rollins in 41, and then Dave Min won that open seat primary to hopefully follow Katie Porter. There's a couple of other districts here. They're kind of a lighter blue, and people often ask about those. That's California 9, Josh Harder, right up here in the Bay Area, and 49, way south. Those are likely Democratic seats. And then there's 2 pink ones that are likely Republican seats. California 3 around the Sacramento foothills area going down the eastern part of the state, and then 40, which is down in Orange County. And those seats are not in play this year for us. The parties working there and people that live there are working there. We'll probably be talking about them in the next few cycles. But you can see this is a pretty solid red, pretty solid blue state. And we've got this area in the middle that we're really focused on. These are all races that are toss-ups that could go to either party. Next slide, please. Why are we sort of the golden opportunity this year? And there's a lot of reasons. We're very optimistic about the House in general. Democrats get a general election bounce in their turnout compared to the midterms, and we're expecting to get that again. And because California is a low turnout state to begin with, we really do feel that bounce here. And it can be as many as 5 or 6 points in some of these low turnout districts, especially in the Central Valley. We also had an early primary compared to the midterms. So we've got extra time compared to a lot of the other states across the country to get the work done. Fundraising has gone pretty well here. A couple of our candidates actually outraised their Republican incumbents this year. We've been promised quite a bit of outside funding from the D-TRIP, from House Majority PAC, Super PAC funds. Money is not going to be the issue that it was in the past. We also have experienced candidates this time. Both Rudy and Adam Gray and Will Rollins are all repeat candidates. Their campaigns are going much better the second time around. And then obviously we're the biggest state. We have the most volunteers. We have a lot of people that live in really blue areas or red areas here that are able to volunteer. The challenges for us this year is simply competition. We have a lot of seats, not just here in California, but with all the Senate races and the presidential race. There's a lot of demand for volunteers. And another challenge that we have in particular in the Central Valley is that it is a low turnout area. We have the voters. We need we just need them to turn their ballots in. It's also what makes working in California a little bit challenging is that the districts here, there's 5 of them or 7 of them if you count the ones that lean our way. They're very different. You can't approach Orange County like you approach the Central Valley. So we have to be very district specific here. And that can be interesting, but also challenging. Next slide, please. Our electoral strategy, because we have a lot of choices, obviously not just here in our state, but across the country. We're focused just on the toss-ups. And that's because so much of the remote work that gets done, the postcard writing, the phone calls, they move the needle, but not so much that you'd want to put them all into races where you need to clear 5 or 6 points. Can you go back to the slide? Back 1 slide. Sorry, thanks. There you go, sorry. So we want to focus on the toss-ups. That's where you're going to make the biggest impact. And then we're really fortunate here that we, out of the only 25 competitive House races in the country, we live in an area where we can drive to 2 of them. And that just, again, makes the work that we can do so much more impactful. And then on top of that, we want to work in the places where we're needed the most. And that's where Cecilia's come in. So it's been so helpful to know her because she can tell us on a given day, where do they need us the most, 13 or 22? We know that 13 is closer to the Bay Area, so they're going to get a little bit more volunteers. That's why we're so focused on 22. Even just talking to KDM about phone banking right now, 22 is where they need the most amount of help. Activate America tells us something a little bit different about postcarding. So we're actually postcarding in 13 because more people are writing postcards to Rudy than they're writing for Adam. So we're able to put our resources where we're needed the most at a given moment in time. And then we also look at our partner strength, like the BAC, very focused now, very coordinated with KDM and Activate Americas too. Very, very much coordinated this year. It's a huge change from what we've seen in the past. And then that cuts all the way down to our fundraising. And we're also fundraising for those candidates that have been outraised by their opponents. So right now we're fundraising for Adam, Rudy, and Dave Min down in 47. The other two candidates did really well in that first quarter. In general, we tend to focus on the Central Valley, and that is for a combination of these reasons. Geography, obviously, but our economies are closely linked. There's a lot of connection to the Silicon Valley and candidates there. The donor base comes primarily from the Bay Area, and so do volunteers. I know at one point, Cecilia told me that about 70% of the volunteers in the Central Valley come from the Bay Area. So it's a tight connection there. We also know that they need us. They're dependent on us. Southern California is very densely populated, and right now they seem to be supporting their own candidates in their own races really well. We also have, there's a bit of a lack of grassroots in district in the Central Valley. They do have groups, they're outstanding, but considering the amount of territory that has to be covered, these are very large districts, the out of district support, they're a little more dependent on it than they are in Southern California, where these districts are a lot more densely populated and smaller. Next slide, please. A little bit about the Central Valley in general. It's just for the demographics, it's about 70 to 73% Hispanic. About 50% of the voters are 18 to 40, and that makes this a young district compared to the typical district in California or across the country. About 10%, at least 10% of residents lack health insurance there. And health insurance is a huge, or healthcare is a huge issue in the Central Valley. It's grown exponentially in the last 10 to 15 years, but healthcare has not expanded to meet the growing population. So that's a continual issue there. They've done better, but they have a long ways to go. The unemployment there is usually about 2 times the national average, and up to a quarter of residents do live below the poverty line. So those issues are going to reflect the demographics. In the fall, KDM did a lot of outreach at the doors and on the phones to identify issues that our Democrats felt were top in their minds going into an election. Economy, healthcare, and housing were top. This spring, we're seeing a lot of the same things, but what's really happening with the whole economy conversation is that it's much more about prices now than the general economy. We could talk about the unemployment rate or the GMP, but people there are affected by prices. So gas prices, grocery prices, it's inflation that they're focused on, wages, and again, that healthcare access, and that would include reproductive rights. Next slide, please. A little bit in detail about each district. They have a lot in common, but there are some really big differences. We know Adam is running again in 13. This was a district, one of the closest in the country. He lost by just 564 votes. We've heard that number a million times. The registration advantage for Democrats here is 14 points. That seems like a slam dunk, but it's not. John Duarte is the Republican that won. He's just a first term, which makes him a little bit more beatable than someone that's been there for a long time. He's a rancher, wealthy rancher from the area. He's been a little bit, I think, ineffectual. He tries to straddle that line of not being a conservative when he thinks it suits him, but he's a little bit wishy-washy, doesn't have a super strong personality. So Adam's running again. The primary there isn't really all that important because both of these men ran unopposed. So there was a 10-point swing, but we hit that 45% mark, which is what we like to see in the primaries, because we are going to get hopefully about at least a 5-point swing in our turnout. So that puts us right, in that tie range. So this will be all a turnout election. And Adams did pretty well fundraising. He didn't have to spend a lot of money, but that's a pretty good number to come in under an incumbent in this situation. Next slide, please. 22 is a little bit different. 13, you saw, was a huge district. It's really large, but it is doable in a day. 22 is also a very large district. It's stuck in the middle of the state. It's hard to get to in a day from either Southern California or Northern California, and it's definitely attached to the Northern California politics. And Southern California has ceded it to us, I think, many years ago. So it is a Northern Bay Area district. Rudy had a good race in 2022 also. He lost by just over 3,000 votes. He has an even larger voter registration advantage there. But his situation is a little bit different. David Valadao is the incumbent, a much tougher opponent. He's been there for a long time. He's been in elected office in 22 or in that area for many, many years. He was one of only two that survived voting against Trump in the impeachment. And he also is pretty wishy-washy. We can't use the Trump argument against him. He's taken some very conservative votes, but he's also taken more moderate ones. Ran sort of a nasty campaign in 2022. And hasn't really gotten off, I think, to a great start. He was also faced a primary challenge. The primary here, won't go into all the details of it, got a little dicier than we wanted. There were 4 candidates. We were worried about Rudy being sort of out of that top 2 in our jungle primary that we have here. It turned out to be great. We went in and we did a lot of extra work that last week before the convention, and he actually came with less than 1,000 votes of actually being the top vote getter. So he did well. Still about that 10-point spread between Democrats and Republicans that we saw in 13, but definitely this is a close margin. This is a winnable margin for us with the expected turnout bump that we'll get. This is definitely a winning district for us, and is considered one of the top most competitive districts in the country. Cash-wise, Rudy definitely needs help. He had to spend more money than he probably anticipated to get through the primary. But is going to be getting a lot of help from the party and from super PACs there. I think that's it for me. Yeah, okay. So that's why 22 right now, I think you can see is just from geography to money to volunteers, it's the needier district right now. And that's why we're focusing on it with our phone banking and our campusing right now.